Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. Today is double upload day, so in this video we'll be going through my Game Week 3 team selection, then later today we'll have a deadline decisions video where I'll answer all of your final questions and dilemmas ahead of the upcoming deadline. So if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for all of that content. Also drop a like on the video as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, wasting absolutely no time at all today and jumping straight into the Game Week 3 team selection. I currently have 3.5 million in the bank and 0 free transfers. That's because I used one in Game Week 2 to remove Solanke, and I've already used my Game Week 3 transfer, which I will show you when we move on to the midfield. No real surprise that I did sell Nkunku, but we'll discuss who I replaced Nkunku with and whether there were any other candidates that I did consider. So in terms of free transfers, I'm not in a good spot because there are many people that have used absolutely none of their free transfers. And so probably going into Game Week 4, we'll be there with 3 and I'm only going to have the 1. So that's not great. But I do love the flexibility that I have by the 3.5 million in the bank. And there are various places that I might use that. Just by glancing at the bench, I could upgrade my third forward, you could see. Or it could be to upgrade the goalkeeper spot or the midfield, or potentially look to get some like an Ollie Watkins into the attack. So there are various things that I can do with that money. And throughout when we look at the team and also at the end of the video when we plan ahead to future weeks, I'm very excited to be able to spend the funds. But as of now, it's probably not optimal to be sat there with 3.5 million in the bank. So this team is currently rated at 94% according to Fantasy Football Hub and projected to get 63.7 points. By the way, you can still get a free team rating and they are still offering, I don't know when this will end, but very soon, 50% off if you want to sign up using the links down below in the description. So moving on to the goalkeepers, obviously Henderson and Valdemarsson. I don't really love using goalkeeper transfers, but as of right now, I would argue that Henderson is, of my 15 players, the one I'm least happy with. Obviously, Anderson joining Fulham isn't great. I'm recording this on Friday the 30th, of course. So as of now, it doesn't look like Gay's going to leave and go to Newcastle. If that does happen, it's even worse. But they do just look a lot weaker defensively than they did at the back end of last season. And I don't know if that's just game state dependent. I don't know if it's just taking them time to get back up to speed or if they just aren't going to be the strong defense that we thought they would be. As of right now, I don't have any plans to sell him until at least Game Week 5 when they play against Man United, then Everton, then Liverpool. Because from about 5 onwards, it's really not a particularly nice run. But next week, they've got Leicester at home. So yes, I could sell him this week for someone like Raya for a hit. And I would prefer to have Raya this week absolutely against Brighton. But then next week, Raya would go into Spurs and City. And Henderson would have Leicester at home. So I think I'm going to keep Henderson until at least Game Week 5. But around Game Week 5, if I've got free transfers to use and or I'm looking at a wild card, I will not hesitate to remove, because whilst I do say it's difficult to predict when goalkeepers will haul, and I don't think it's the highest upside use of a transfer, I still don't think you should just sit there with a goalkeeper that you are pretty sure isn't keeping a clean sheet every single week. And in all honesty, the more annoying thing is he's not even making that many saves. And if they're not keeping clean sheets, you see with Flecken in recent weeks, at least Flecken is making a lot of saves. Henderson's not doing either. So right now, no, I'm absolutely not happy. And as I said, Raya is probably the standout to me. And I currently only have 2 Arsenal assets. So something to consider. I did not think I'd be wanting to take a -4 hit for Raya at the start of the season. But he's keeping the clean sheets and he's making the saves. It just feels like Brighton, Spurs, City is not the set of fixtures that you want to bring a Raya in for. He will continue to make saves in those fixtures, but I don't think there's 3 clean sheets there. I would argue probably 1/2, which is still pretty good and probably better than Henderson, but maybe doesn't justify the hit. Another keeper that he's doing very well is Alisson. So those 2 5.5s performing extremely well. Unfortunately, I'm already on triple Liverpool, though, so that isn't really an option for me. And again, this doesn't feel like the week to do it. So sadly, Henderson will be staying. I don't imagine he'll stay beyond sort of Game Week 5 or 6 unless we see a sudden turnaround in the coming weeks, though. Moving on to the defence, I'm actually extremely happy with all 5 of my defenders and feel absolutely no need to make any transfers here. So Gabriel, Trent and Porro are my sort of 3 premium defenders. Trent has been exceptional. He's up to 1.66 expected assists over the opening 2 weeks, which is just mind-boggling numbers. It's some of the best creativity we've ever seen. And if he can even keep up half of that, he will be getting, I don't even know, 15, 20 attacking returns, which will be a ridiculous number. But I would go as far as saying, as of now, Trent is my favourite asset in the game and the most important asset for me to have in my team. I would not sacrifice Trent for anything. I'd rather sacrifice an Arsenal defender. I'd rather sacrifice my midfield because he is playing like an attacker. But what we are also seeing with Liverpool is, as of now, they have been the best defence over the opening 2 weeks. They've conceded 0.8 XGC. So, sorry, 0.8 XG, which, to put that into perspective, the second best defence in the league is City so far over the opening 2, and they've conceded 1.5. So Liverpool are streets ahead over the opening 2, which isn't a massive sample size in terms of their defensive data. They're actually the only team in the league to only concede one big chance. So if you're telling me that Liverpool's defence could improve this season, and we'll have to see over the coming weeks, and Trent is going to be even more creative, he's worth about 10 million. Genuinely, I'm not even exaggerating there. If he can keep up this level of sort of the amount of chances he's creating, and Liverpool's defence does improve. So delighted to have him. I'd also like to have Andy Robertson. Again, I'm already on triple Liverpool. So it's one of those where if I could have 4 or 5 from Liverpool, I probably would. And I know that's sad to say as a Man United fan going into this fixture. I just expect Liverpool to have too much for Manchester United. Whether a clean sheet is on the cards, I don't know, but they'll definitely score goals. So very happy to have Trent. Gabriel, very happy to have an Arsenal defender. I know I just said that the next 3 fixtures aren't great, and maybe I won't play Gabriel against Spurs and City. I've got the option to rotate them out. Probably against Spurs, I would imagine I will. But maybe against City, I just play Robinson, Trent, and then I have Porro come on, and Gabriel does sit on the bench. But these are also fixtures where you could see City Arsenal being a 0-0. So Gabriel, I'm delighted I've gone with. In hindsight, I wish I'd have gone for the combination where I had David Raya instead in goal. But Gabriel, all he needs is to score a goal in the next few weeks. And I'm delighted I chose him instead. So Trent and Gabriel, very happy with. And Porro is currently sat on my bench. I could sell Porro next week, potentially, because he's got Arsenal, and then I could use the funds elsewhere. Not that I necessarily need that much more funding in my team. But as of now, Porro is just, I'm really happy with him because the clean sheets, I don't think are going to be particularly common for Spurs this season, but he's been so attacking. I don't think he's going to have the same output and numbers as someone like a Trent, but in terms of the pockets that he's picking higher up the pitch, he's just finding space in between sort of the midfield and the defence of the opposition. And I think Porro will get plenty of attacking returns this season. And so what it feels like, again, is you've got an attacker for 5.5 million that has the additional chance for clean sheets as well. So very happy to have Porro. But this week he is sat on the bench because I've got Robinson against Ipswich away. There is a discussion to be had here because I think Robinson and Porro's chances of a clean sheet are both fairly low. I don't think Fulham keep a clean sheet here because I actually think Ipswich are decent enough going forward and Fulham are not a good defence. However, I do think that also Spurs don't have a very good chance for a clean sheet, right? As I would say poor. Have Newcastle been poor? I don't know if they've been poor, but as average as Newcastle have been over the opening 2 weeks, I still feel like at home you would expect them to score there. So if they're both going to concede, we think, that's my prediction, both playing away, well, Porro is probably more attacking than Robinson. So there is a discussion to be had that maybe if I expect both to concede, I do start Porro. I just think that Robinson's chance for a clean sheet is slightly higher for me. And as a result, I will back that. And also, if Sanderberg and Anderson do come into the 11, well, maybe that does make Fulham a little bit stronger defensively. So I just think that his chance of a clean sheet is slightly higher, Robinson, but then Porro's attacking threat is slightly higher. So let me know down below what you think on that. Would you be tempted to start Robinson? I know this isn't the best way to think about it, but I also do have Alexander Isak. And I'm like, well, if I'm backing Newcastle to score, or if I'm hoping they will, based on the fact that I've got Isak, let me bet against a clean sheet for Spurs and maybe go for Robinson instead. So this obviously also avoids a clash for my team as well. The only other defender to discuss is Greaves. Not much to say other than they've actually got some really nice fixtures coming up. Ipswich, I'm not going to play him in any given week unless I'm forced to. But if I am forced to, I don't mind a defender with good fixtures who's also decent in the air and could get you a goal. So very happy that I chose him as my £4 million defender. So there we go. The defence is looking really strong. I do not see myself making a transfer at all. The only place that I would say I'm lacking, I still don't have a City defender, and their data does look okay over the opening 2 weeks. So I would expect them to keep clean sheets soon, but I don't feel the need to rush out and get myself a Lewis or a Gvardiol. And then outside of that, it's just an Aston Villa defender, an Ezri Konsa or a Pau Torres. It would be nice to have one, but right now I don't feel like I'm desperately missing out because I've got Gabriel, Trent and Porro, and then if I need Robinson and Greaves, I've got them as well. So there we go. That's the defence. Let's move on to the midfield. So, guys, moving on to the midfield, and this is where I made my transfer on Sunday night, which was to doing Nkunku to Rodgers. I did discuss this in my transfer plans video that I was likely to make this move if Nkunku looked likely to drop in price. I checked the price changes over at Fantasy Football Hub, which you can access using the link in the description, and he did look likely to drop. So I sold Nkunku, he did indeed drop, and then Rodgers didn't actually rise until I think Monday or Tuesday night, but that's still a 0.2 million swing I've saved 0.2 million by making the moves early. So I don't always recommend it, but the fact that I knew I wanted to sell Nkunku, I thought Rodgers was the standout option, and also Rodgers didn't have a midweek game. Nkunku's also played 90 minutes on Thursday, by the way, in the Europa Conference League playoff. So I feel like the early move on this occasion was justified, and it's allowed me to save 0.2. Nkunku also looks likely to drop a second time in price, maybe even before the deadline. So even before the Gameweek 3 deadline, it could be as much as 0.3 million that I've managed to save there. So very happy I made the move. Just as to why I chose Rodgers, he's not perfect. I don't expect too much from him, but when I brought him in, he was 5 million. I brought him in as a 5 million asset, knowing that all I need from him is 1 or 2 returns over the next 3 or 4 weeks, and he's justifying that price tag. I think some people have unrealistic expectations. I've seen people claiming that he's a captaincy shout or a differential captaincy. I wouldn't go there, really. Honestly, he is, in my opinion, my 7th best attacker. But with the fixtures that they've got over the next 4 and the eye test, and I know I'm a data-driven manager, the data's been okay, but what I can see when I watch Villa is he's so integral to their attack, and I think he will be involved in returns in the coming weeks. The next 4 fixtures, actually, for Villa are about as good as you can get based on what we've seen. They play against Leicester and Ipswich away. Ideally, obviously, every game would be at home, but they are fine fixtures, 2 newly promoted sides. And then the 2 games in between that is Everton and Wolves at home. They have been the 2 of the worst defences over the opening 2 weeks. They have looked absolutely awful all over the place. Everton have conceded 7 goals. Is that right? They haven't scored. Wolves looked terrible against Chelsea. Arsenal could have put more past them as well. So I think overall the next 4 fixtures are brilliant, and I don't know when I look to wildcard, but if I'm not wildcarding for the next 4, and even then Manchester United, by the way, in 5 game weeks' time, that's even an okay fixture. So very happy to have Rodgers, and yeah, my expectations aren't overly high. I just hope that I can get a couple of returns over the next few. The only thing I would say is I only have 7 attackers because I've got Cannon as a cheap forward on the bench. I am looking at potentially using that 3.5 soon to upgrade that 8th attacker so that I don't have to start someone like a Rodgers every week. Just regarding if there were any other options, I'll just jump over to Fantasy Football Hub to just talk through some of the players with the highest points projection. So I already had Eze. Remember, I had 2 million in the bank, by the way. So I could have gone all the way up to an 8.5 million asset. Already had Eze. Already had Jota, so that's good. I've already got the top 2 for points projections. Ødegaard, I didn't want to use my 3rd Arsenal spot in case I wanted to go for a Raya or a defender or a Havertz instead, so wasn't interested there. Bruno Fernandes plays against Liverpool, and he's been very frustrating. He's not putting the ball in the back of the net, and Manchester United aren't as well. So Fernandes, there was some temptation, but I didn't want to use up all of my budget. Gordon, I've been a little bit worried by what I've seen from Newcastle, so wasn't interested there. Obviously, Bailey, a great option, and I could have gone there, and he might get more returns, but his minutes aren't quite as good as Rodgers, so that was the justification for going for Rodgers. Semenyo, a player that is going so under the radar, 1.96 expected goal involvement over the opening 2 weeks. That is the highest of all players in FPL, and he plays against Everton this week, who have been, as we said, so bad defensively. So Semenyo, if you're looking for a cheeky punt that is still only 2.7% owned, Fantasy Football Hub like it, I like it, a great shout. Luis Diaz, I couldn't go for. I have triple Liverpool. Bowen, fixtures-wise, not great. And Burmo is a player I'm interested in, but remember he's got City and Spurs in 4 and 5. But Southampton at home this week, there was some temptation from me to go for Brian Mbeumo. I just decided against it. Obviously, then we come to Rodgers. So, Fantasy Football Hub, again, they think Rodgers is fine, but he's not one of the top points projectors over the coming weeks. I guess if you were to change this to Game Week 3 to 5, it might change the list slightly. But I've just gone over the next sort of 3 or 4 game weeks. Matoma, again, if it was Game Week 4 that I was making the move, when they've got Ipswich and Nottingham Forest, I might be interested. I don't think there was... Oh, Gibbs White was an option as well for me. I think he was much better in Game Week 2 than he was in Game Week 1. I was actually watching the game live at the City Ground in Game Week 1 against Bournemouth. I was very disappointed with Gibbs White. But against Southampton, he was brilliant. By far and away the best player on the pitch for me. So there was some interest. And Madueke, I suppose, is worth discussing. It's just a bit knee-jerk for me. He also played something like 60 to 65 minutes in the Europa Conference League game. I don't even know if he's going to start. I would imagine he would, but I still don't know how many minutes he's going to get. And for me, it felt a bit knee-jerky. So I think those were the main players I was considering. But to narrow it down, Smith Rowe wasn't even on there, was he? Did we discuss Smith Rowe? No, Smith Rowe was the other option. So for me, it was probably Rodgers, Smith Rowe, Gibbs White, Mbeumo or Semenyo. I'd probably narrowed it down to those 5, but for me, Rodgers just stood out. So that was the transfer. And then the other 4 players I am very happy with, to be honest. Eberechi Eze has now fallen in price to 6.9 million. This is dividing opinions. Some people are of the opinion that he's a fantastic asset. He's getting chances. He's on penalties. His minutes are good. Just keep him. And I do think that the next 3 fixtures against Chelsea, Leicester, Man United, and then even going into Everton, they're not bad fixtures. They really aren't. Chelsea have looked good going forward, but weak defensively. Leicester at home's a great fixture, and United find ways to concede chances. So I don't dislike the fixtures. He is on pens, and he has had the joint most shots in the league over the opening 2 weeks at 12. So 12 shots for Eze, 12 shots for Semenyo. Those are the top 2. So I just don't think removing an asset who has penalties, minutes, set pieces, and is getting the chances is a good idea. Obviously, if over 3-4 weeks he's still not converting, then it does become a point when you say it's one thing getting chances and creating chances. If that doesn't equate to FPL points, you do need to eventually remove these players. But for now, Eze is in no world a sell for me. So I'm happy for the price drop. It means less people are going to get his points that I think are coming. Saka's a difficult one because I want Palmer. Everyone wants Palmer at the moment. And Saka does have 3 relatively difficult fixtures. Brighton at home is not a good fixture. I don't think it's bad, but it's not good. And then Spurs and City away are also not great fixtures. From game week 6 onwards, a lot of people will be looking to wildcard, so you could sell Saka for the next 3 for someone like a Palmer, and then bring Saka back in game week 6. The temptation's there for me. I've got plenty of money to make that move. So Saka to Palmer for a -4 hit is a possibility, but I can't do it. I love Saka too much. I think Saka's too good. And Arsenal will, in my opinion, still score goals in all 3 of those games. And if I'm expecting Arsenal to score goals in the next 3 games, even if I only expect them to get, let's say pessimistically, 5 to 6 goals, I'm expecting Saka to be involved in 30 to 40% of Arsenal's goals this season. I'm expecting 1 or 2 attacking returns over the next 3, and that's like a bare minimum. He also could get a penalty, could get another return chucked in there. You could be looking at 3 returns for Saka in the next 3 games. And I think if Palmer gets 4 or 5, then yeah, it could have been worth it, but you just never know. And for me, removing an asset like Saka for a hit before a home game, it just doesn't sit quite right with me. So for that reason, Saka is staying. I don't want to remove him, but I would love to get Palmer. If I do want to get Palmer, I do have the option of selling Salah or Jota. Obviously, it's not a great fixture this week against Manchester United away. I equally don't think that's an awful fixture. And I have 3.5 million in the bank. So I actually tweeted this morning, I can do Jota to Palmer for a -4 hit and still have some money to play with in future weeks. So I'd love to know down below, this is so knee-jerk. I mean, it's so knee-jerk, but would you do Jota to Palmer for a -4 hit? The temptation's absolutely there, but the next 3 fixtures are very good for Liverpool. And if Jota continues to get good minutes, I've said that Jota is one of the best value assets in the game. So it comes down to, do I expect over the next few Jota's minutes to drop quite a lot? Do remember that between game week 4 and 5, so between the Forest game and the Bournemouth game, Champions League does start. If Jota is favoured in the Champions League, his minutes in the Prem might drop even further. So he might go from an early sub to potentially not even starting. If that's the case, I suppose I can decide to move at that point for Palmer. But this does feel like a nice entry point for Palmer and maybe an okay exit point for Jota. I would say I'm only like 10 to 15% likely to make this move. I'm not really highly considering it, but it is at least a possibility that I should consider. Then the final of the 5 midfielders is Mohamed Salah. At the moment, he is my captaincy option this week, which again, having triple Liverpool against Man United and captaining one of them doesn't feel great as a United fan, but I have to take bias out of it and say this is a good fixture for Liverpool. They have been, for me, the most impressive team over the opening 2 weeks in the Premier League. So I'm liking what I'm seeing from Liverpool. And I just think that the other options I've got is probably Bukayo Saka would be the standout captaincy option outside of Salah. But when I say, do I think that Brighton at home is a much better fixture than Man United away? No. It is slightly better because it's at home. But I think Brighton and United's defences are fairly similar. So fixture-wise, I don't think there's much between them. And do I think Salah is a better asset than Saka? Absolutely I do. That's why I'm paying so much for him. So if I think Salah's a slightly better option in terms of a player for FPL, but Saka's got a slightly better fixture, it's relatively close. But at the moment, I'm just backing Mohamed Salah. Like I said, if I bring in Palmer, there's a chance I give Palmer the armband, but I just don't see myself taking a hit this week, unfortunately. So that's the midfield. I wouldn't say I'm massively happy with it, but I'm also not missing a ton of players. I would say the only one that I would really like to squeeze in here, other than Palmer, is maybe like a Smith Rowe. But I already have 2 Fulham assets. I'm happy with the 5 midfielders. So that's the transfer for Game Week 3. Let's move on to the 2 forwards and then look at planning ahead for future weeks. So moving on to the 2 forwards, this should be relatively straightforward and quick because it's Moniz and Isak, and I only have a £4.5 million forward on the bench. So just the 7 attackers, and like I said, there is the temptation to upgrade Cannon in the coming weeks just to give me a little bit more squad depth and the option to bench players if I want to. But I'm actually really happy with both Moniz and Isak, especially for this week. I think the fixtures look good for both. So just on Moniz, I obviously brought Moniz in Game Week 2 for Solanke. I know a lot of new owners were very frustrated because he blanked, Smith Rowe comes away with a 10-pointer, even Robinson comes away with an assist. So it is very frustrating, and I was very frustrated. But what I love about Moniz is he's getting the chances. So in Game Week 2, he had 7 shots in the box, which was the most out of all players. In fact, the 7 shots that he took was the most out of all players, let alone 7 shots in the box. He also missed a big chance as well. And you might see this all as negative things, that he's taking that many shots and he's missing big chances. But I'm always of the opinion, and it's why I still think Eze is a great player to keep. If a player is taking shots, getting chances, but not getting the returns, as long as they can keep that up, the returns will be imminent. Especially for someone like Moniz, who I don't think is a poor finisher. It's not like we're talking like a Darwin Nunez who will get the chances and never score them. Moniz, for me, is a very good finisher. So I expect him to take those chances soon, and I like that he's still getting them. Also, his minutes, I don't think they're super secure. It could be that Raul Jimenez starts the odd game ahead of him, but he still seems to be getting around 75 to 80 minutes as well. And Ipswich away is a good game from a attacking perspective. We actually know that Ipswich are weaker defensively when they play at home, at least in the Championship, because they tend to go for it more. They want to impress the fans. They want to play a more attacking style of football. And Kieran McKenna has shown he's not just going to park the bus against every team. He had opportunities and went for it a little bit against Liverpool and City. So I think this is a game where Fulham could score a few goals, and so I'm very happy to have Moniz. And then Isak, I actually think Isak is a captaincy option for me this week. And that's not disrespecting Spurs, but they aren't a particularly tight defence, and Newcastle are much better at home. And Isak is still Isak, right? We said a few weeks ago Isak was the most essential player going into Game Week 1. Nothing really has changed other than that Newcastle do look like they're struggling to feed him the ball. Now, that isn't great, and it is the thing that's putting me off, but you don't expect that to continue. I don't understand what has changed drastically from last year to this year, that all of a sudden now Isak is a bad option, because he was so good at the back end of last season. So I think in one of the upcoming 3 weeks, my prediction is that Isak scores 2 or more goals in a single game, in one of Spurs, Wolves or Fulham. And I think it could be this week because we know he is much better at home. If he blanks again this week and once again struggles to get the chances, going into 2 away games, there will be the temptation to sell him for someone like a João Pedro or a cheaper asset. And that might even then, or I suppose if I want to take a -4 next week, maybe downgrading a Saka to a cheaper midfielder, and I could even get up to Haaland. And that will be an option for me. That will be something to consider because Isak is eating a lot of my budget. And with 3.5 in the bank, if I do make one further downgrade, I can get up to Haaland. And it is obviously a notable omission in my team that I don't have him. And I think in Game Week 4, a lot of people that have Haaland will move to Salah. So I do think going into Game Week 4, it could be a position where a lot of people all of a sudden own Salah and Haaland. But I also think that there could be a world in which I decide to omit Haaland and actually try to bring a Palmer in, like I said, into midfield and go for a more premium midfield. So I'm not too scared of Haaland or too desperate to get him in. It's not fear for me. It's just acknowledging that at the moment, Haaland looks brilliant. He really does. And I said this on the FPL Therapy podcast. This year, or this season, Haaland looks for me much better than he did last season. I'm not talking about the amount of goals he's scoring. I'm talking about, and this is an eye test, not a data thing. Just when you watch him, he's smiling more. He looks fitter. He looks leaner. He looks mentally more there. And that is something where as a non-owner, you're watching and thinking, this doesn't feel right owning a Haaland that looks that fit and hungry and wants to score that many goals. So, yeah, I would like to own Haaland. It won't be this week. It could be next week for a -4, but more likely, it won't be until Game Week 6 or 7. That is the most likely outcome because obviously after Game Week 4, which I think is Brentford at home, after that he's then got Arsenal in Game Week 5. So it's more likely from Game Week 6 or 7 onwards that I'd be looking to get Haaland in. And as I said, the only other option with this attack is upgrading that cannon spot because I've got 3.5 in the bank. I have all the way up to 8 million. I can't quite get Havertz as a result. And to be honest, there aren't any 7.5 forwards or even 7 forwards that I would desperately want. So I think the only person I would upgrade Cannon to is maybe like a João Pedro in Game Week 4. Just bear in mind, though, I think João Pedro is off on international duty with Brazil. Brazil's second game of the international break is on the 11th. And then Brighton play on the 14th. I don't think João Pedro starts in Game Week 4. If that's the case, I think he's away with Brazil. We'll confirm that in the next video. But if he's not, then obviously don't worry. But if he is, even if he doesn't play, you've got like a 2 or 3 week turnaround. 2 or 3 day turnaround from when he finishes to when he's back with Brighton. Maybe he still starts, but that might be enough to put me off. So we'll discuss that over the international break and going into Game Week 4. But the option is there to upgrade Cannon as well. And just, like I said, just give me that option if I don't want to start a Rodgers every week. Or if I do get an injury, I'm not forced into making a transfer. So there we go. That is the overall team for Game Week 3. I'd love to know what you think down below. Let's now sort of plan ahead to future weeks, and I'll show you some of the moves that I'm eyeing up in sort of Game Week 4, 5, 6, and beyond. So guys, moving over to Fantasy Football Hub and just planning ahead and looking at future weeks and what transfers I might potentially be looking to do. I love these parts of the videos because it's just, we get proper nerdy with it. If you do want to do this for yourself, I mean, I talk about Fantasy Football Hub all the time and I'm aware it's probably very annoying, but this is the best feature on the site for me. You can talk about all of the other amazing stuff they have, but the ability to just plan ahead, you can look at 1 game week projections, you can look at 3 game weeks, you can actually get price changes on your team now. So rather than going and separately looking at price changes, you can see on your own team if players are likely to change in price soon, which you can see in my team as of right now, they're probably not. But yeah, I highly recommend it. There'll be links down below to get 50% off at the moment, only £3.25 per month. If you sign up to the annual subscription, it's probably worth doing now, for me at least, when we get to this stage where we need to start planning ahead. So, Game Week 3. I've already made my transfer. It will say 3.3 here because obviously it's not aware because I didn't plug it in on Sunday night that I made the move on Sunday. But I actually have 3.5 in the bank. So for Game Week 4, Henderson and Eze I know have been disappointing. Even if they disappoint again, I won't sell them because they've got Leicester at home. Trent, Gabriel, Robinson, and to some extent Porro I'm all happy with. I don't think I want to make a defender transfer. And then other players I'm happy with. Salah, perfectly fine keeping. Eze, again, I'm going to keep because of the fixture. Rodgers is fine. Muniz is fine for at least 1 more week against West Ham at home. And so I think the players that I could see myself selling as early as Game Week 4 is maybe Jota, maybe, believe it or not, Saka, and then Isak and Cannon, right? So those 4. So 2 midfielders, 2 forwards, I could see myself switching around. And it really probably comes down to like how desperately do I want Haaland? And if he gets another hat-trick, probably quite desperate. But if I do want Haaland, we're looking at, like I said, Isak out. And then this would be for a hit is the only thing. I don't have the transfers like many other people do because I've been kind of forced. Solanke kind of needed to go and so did Nkunku. So it would be for a hit. And then I'm probably, unfortunately, looking at selling Saka at this stage for basically, we're probably, I reckon it'd be something like a Matoma, just given their fixtures, or a Minte, or I could even go for a Gibbs White. But I mean, that looks nice. Bringing in 2 players for a home fixture. I'd have the option if I wanted to captain Haaland, although I might still captain Salah anyway. But that's for a hit, and it does feel a little bit of like fear of Haaland. So the other option I've got is at this stage I do still just go for the Saka to Palmer move. Or if I don't want to do the Saka to Palmer move, I could do the Jota to Palmer move, right? Because I have the money to do so. So there are lots of ways I could approach this. And like I said, I could even do something like Cannon to João Pedro if I think he's going to start in Game Week 4. So I guess to plan ahead, I don't know which of those I'll go for, but I'll show you what my team looks like in Game Week 5 without any of the transfers to just understand where we might need them. At this stage, I think I probably would play Pedro Porro ahead of Gabriel. Whether I would play Robinson or Gabriel, though. I mean, I've even got Greaves against Southampton at home, by the way, on the bench. I just scrolled down way too far there. But that's even an option. So I probably would play Gabriel, in all honesty. I just think Arsenal are that good. But Henderson's not great here. This is now when Eze goes into a pretty rough set of fixtures. Rodgers is still fine here. Jota, if I've not sold him, I'm okay with. The team's not looking ideal here. So if I didn't make the moves before, there would certainly be some temptation to make some moves now. Probably a combination of Saka, Eze, Muniz might be leaving the squad, but some of those might have potentially left already. And we just never know what players might crop up in the future. And then obviously going into Game Week 6, I think a lot of people, myself maybe as well, will be looking to wildcard. So I don't think there's much point planning beyond here. The only thing I would say on a wildcard this week, if you look at my team, does my team need a wildcard? I've already got double Arsenal. My triple Liverpool still have a good fixture against Wolves. Rodgers has one better good fixture still. My double Palace, like I know I might not still own all of these players. At this stage, I probably would have sold Isak, the only one with a tricky fixture. And Haaland, who I would probably look to maybe bring on a wild card. He's got Newcastle away in 6. It's not actually until sort of 7 onwards that I really like the fixtures for Haaland. So yeah, I don't know basically at the moment what the plan is, but in 4 it is going to be one of those sets of transfers. I see myself still using the transfers. I know that I might regret this because everyone else is maybe going to be rolling transfers and saving them up, and they're going to have 5 frees by the time I've used all of mine. But I also don't think having free transfers means nothing, right? Points mean something. So if I can gain points and avoid losing points by using my transfers and being aggressive over the coming weeks, I don't necessarily hate that. I don't feel like I have to roll. I did say at the start of the season that I wanted you guys to remind me not to roll for the sake of it. And so if I see transfers to be made, I absolutely will do. So listen, the team for game week 3, 4, 5 doesn't look bad. There are lots of possibilities when you have 3.5 million in the bank. I just need Haaland to not punish me too much this week, and I can decide if I want to bring him in from game week 4 onwards. But as of right now, the transfer's already been made. Brought in Rodgers for Nkunku, hopefully can do something. I don't plan on taking a -4. I'd love to know what you think of my team, and let me know what your plans are for Game Week 3 down below as well. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 3 team selection, the first of 2 uploads today. And if you are watching this later on Friday, do check out my deadline decisions video, which is probably already out. And if you're watching it early, firstly, thank you. But also do tune into that video later today. And also my deadline stream tomorrow as well. Make sure to be there for 9 AM UK time. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.